guys, so I have spoken in length before of my love for, or about my love for Vichy, and particularly the DermaBlend coverage stick. I've done videos and stuff on them in the past, so I'll link to any of those below, but they have reformulated and they've brought out new formulations, but they've brought out new products as well. So a couple of the bits that were sent to me were this new DermaBlend compact cream and the DermaBlend body foundation, which is class. Now I think there was already a body foundation in the States with DermaBlend, but this is what we have out here now anyhow. So I'll talk a little bit about the cream foundation first, because this is what I've on my face today, and I will show you myself applying it in a few minutes. But I'll tell you a little bit about it. It's a high coverage, so a high coverage cream foundation. That's it there. I was sent actually a darker colour, but luckily my friend in work wanted to test it out and she uses the darker colour for tan, so she got me this. Normally it's 20, well I picked it up myself and she bought it off me, but normally it's €24 or €24.50, but it was on sale in Boots for 16 or 17 euro, so that was great that she was able to get it at the lower price. And then she got me, or I got myself the opal. So long story short, I was able to get my own colour. So I knew that, well, I've always been opal in the DermaBlend. The colours can vary a little bit from product to product. So in the actual DermaBlend, the normal foundation, I found the opal is a little bit too dark on me. But this one is a really good colour. You can see I'm wearing the foundation now today. And it is designed for, you know, kind of minor to major skin flaws, so it will you know, cover the harder to cover stuff, so like birthmarks and vitiligo and stuff like that. Now this is described as a full coverage daily foundation, which I personally would never wear this much of a coverage or this high of a coverage on a daily basis. This is actually even as like a bit heavier than I'd like to go normally, but it's very comfortable on the skin, which I'm very pleased with, because there are other full coverage foundations I have that I can really feel on the skin and just don't feel comfortable on the skin, whereas this is lovely and light. Now it contains waxes and oils, and there's a little bit of like kaolin powder in there as well, and talc, so it's supposed to hydrate as well as kind of absorb, you know, any maybe the oily areas, and the waxes are what gives it that kind of comfortable feel on the face, so it like moves with you. Now one thing I will say about it, it does say that it is suitable for all skin types, but I am one of these skin types where I have everything going on in my face at the moment. I get a oily T-zone, like I said before. I can be normal to a little bit dry everywhere else. At the moment I'm quite dehydrated, dry around the eye area. That's to do with facial treatments I'm getting at the moment basically, and the retinol that I use. So what it looks like is it's just surface, what's the word I'm looking for? It's superficial like dehydration, kind of cracked lines, just skin, like dry dehydrated skin at the very top, and this does show that up. So even though it is for all skin types, if you are on the very dry side or the very oil side, you really will have to prep your skin accordingly. So for me, I definitely used a primer down the centre, which I'll show in a sec, and you need to moisturise and exfoliate any dry or flaky areas. But I'll just show you myself applying it now first. So Vichy recommends that you moisturise really well under any of their like foundation or concealer products. So I'm using a hydrating but lightweight enough moisturiser here. It is oil free, but it has sufficient moisture in it, and I'm applying this all over the face. You don't really need to use a sunblock because there is enough sunblock in the actual products itself, and I definitely can't skip my eye cream because my eyes are quite dry. Even with the foundation or with the eye cream, they were still quite dry, but I wouldn't normally use this foundation on my eyes, but I wanted to use it for the purpose of the video. Then I definitely need to apply a primer to the centre of my face as well, so along my T-zone where I tend to get a little bit oily throughout the day. This will also help minimise the look of my pores. Now I generally don't have the biggest looking pores, but when I use a full coverage foundation, it does tend to show them up. So I'm applying the foundation directly onto my skin, just use my fingers. I think this is the best way, because then you're not going to overload your brush if you apply it with the brush first, and when you're buffing it into your skin, then it's really just buffing in enough product without spreading loads around the face. So my favourite brush to apply the product with is something really tightly packed. So something like the Duo Fibre, like 187 by MAC wouldn't be ideal. You want something that has a lot of strength behind it. So that's why I'm using this really tightly packed think it's the buffing brush or the Face Expert brush or something like that from Real Techniques that I'm using here. Another thing that would be really good would be the Beauty Blender. So a damp sponge would be really good at blending it in without it looking too heavy on the skin. So I actually blended and buffed this in for a lot longer than I would normally do with other foundations, so that it looks quite natural and a bit more skin-like once I'm finished. And then I applied it as I would a concealer in a slightly thicker fashion with my fingers then over any areas where I wanted more coverage. And then I just patted and buffed this into the skin as I would normally with any other concealer. So here is a before picture, me without any makeup on, and then here is my face with the foundation on before I set it with powder or before I put any other makeup on, and then here it is set with powder and with bronzer and stuff on, so it does give a lovely finish. This was myself wearing it last week, and my eyes weren't as dry here, so you can see it was much kinder to the eye area here. So that's my own fault, that's just because of my eyes at the moment, but it just gives lovely coverage without it being ridiculously heavy. I could still even see a few freckles. And then this photo was taken 8 or 9 hours later. This was me after a full day of work. So you can see it actually held up pretty well, and I didn't touch up my makeup at all throughout the day because I wanted to see how this would last by itself. And then of course this is how it looks like once everything is set and I've the rest of my makeup on and stuff like that. So I always do find that with a fuller coverage foundation your face looks very flat and like there's no dimension and no kind of character to it, because it's just taken away any of the natural tones you have in your skin. So I definitely need to contour. Now I didn't put blusher on today, but the contour is kind of enough, but I definitely need to contour and add life to the rest of my face with a bit of highlighter and stuff like that, which I did. I do like this foundation. I don't love, like adore it, because I'm not the biggest fan of full coverage foundations in the world, but as far as full coverage foundation goes, this is very good. Now I didn't use any other concealer. You can see there that spot is covered pretty good. I suppose I could go over it with a slightly fuller coverage concealer, but in regards to any of the other blemishes that I normally would need a concealer with other foundations, it's covered really, really well. Now it's not as thick in consistency as the Corrective concealer that I normally have, the older one. You can see even there it just blends, it's very, very soft, whereas with the one that I'm used to, the foundation stick, I'm used to having to work that a little bit work with it a little bit more with my fingers to get to that lovely soft texture. So this does seem to have maybe less powders or something like that in it. So I do find that my face does get oily as the day goes on, possibly because of the oils and stuff in it. So I do need to use oil absorbing papers and powder, so I don't get the, what does it say, the 12-hour hold on my oily areas like it claims to do. And one thing I found very helpful is on my dehydrated areas, I find it very useful to spritz just a water spritz on my face throughout the day. This one's nearly empty, so it sounds funny, but that really does help with how it looks on the face as well. So that's another thing. I do think it's a really good foundation, but you do need to be aware of how to prep your skin and stuff underneath. Now, one thing I will say is another thing that they've actually released a few bits. I've got the bits, I've got the information here in front of me, and they have the new cream. Then they also have the regular foundation. I'm not sure if that's been reformulated or not, and then the regular setting powder. They seem to be the same. Then they brought out this, and I can only show you a picture here. This is a new stick corrective concealer, or it's called the Corrective stick. Now this is way smaller than the original one. It's only 4.5 grams and the original one is, let me just check for you. So the original one is actually 12 grams. This is the one that I usually use. You can see there's not a huge amount of it left. So that's a bit heartbreaking if it is a case of this one is going to be taking over this one, because when I was in Boots you can only see the new black packaging and none of this stuff is here. So I'm actually a little bit kind of devastated about that. And another thing I'm kind of devastated about is the colour, the new opal in this guy is now a pinky beige. So it doesn't suit me at all, and when I was trying it on the back of my hand in the store, it seemed very dry and I had to, like it dragged on the skin a little bit, but I don't actually have it myself to try it out, but that's all I saw from that. And I am disappointed if that is the case, that these are going. Now there's also only going to be 5 shades in this, or in the new one of this, or the new Corrective stick, which is a step down from about 6 or 7 anyhow. And also with this guy here, the first guy I was on about, there are 5 shades as well, so it's not the most extensive shade range by any means. And then the other thing that was sent to me was the DermaBlend, it's the body foundation, the total body foundation. Now I'm actually quite excited about this because I have obviously the MAC face and body, and I think that's great for anyone who maybe doesn't want to wear tights on like a wedding, you know, especially I find this a lot with mothers of the brides who don't want to wear necessarily tights, or people who have tan on and it's gone a bit streaky. Great for that, but it's often not enough coverage, and some people think that they could use it for varicose veins and then they realise they don't have the coverage in it, whereas this guy you will get the coverage from, and it's also perfect for covering tattoos and stuff like that. So I'm actually very excited about that. Now I only have the colour medium, so I will use it on my kit, but I don't actually have it, you know, I can't use it on myself. You can see here it's roughly like an NC25 kind of colour if you want to compare it to a MAC, but the coverage is brilliant. It's very, very malleable. It feels lovely, and it feels like it'd be comfortable on the skin as well. It, you know, it's not very dry or dragging or anything like that. So that just gives you an idea of the coverage there. That guy is going to be €25, and there's 100ml in that, so there is a good whack in this. Probably didn't actually mention this one. This one has 9.5 grams in it, and like I said, it's £24.50 normally, but I did get it on sale in Boots. So that's what's available at the moment. I think I like that there's more additions to the range, so I like that there's the body foundation and stuff like that. Like I said, I'll be very devastated if it's a case of these bigger sticks are going, and I'm unimpressed with how they've changed Opal, the colour of Opal, to the pinky beige tone in the new this guy. But in regards to this, which I have been using, I am impressed. The first time I wore it without a primer, and it did sit into my pores, but now that I know how to prep my skin with it, I'm really loving it. If I had to give it one kind of thumbs down or one like point down, it would be that it sits a little bit more into my lines than I'd be used to with other foundations, but all full coverage foundations do that. So all I need to do is be a little bit more careful of that before I set it with powder, and just kind of try and thin it out a little bit on the face before I set it with powder. But that's it. I still think it's a really good foundation. I'm very impressed with it, and I'll definitely use it more for kind of nights out and stuff like that. But it does contain the SPF of 30, so it's brilliant for the daytime, especially if you do want full coverage. And the total body foundation is an SPF of 35, which again is brilliant, especially if you're going to be out all day and you're worried about sunscreen. So you definitely don't need any other sunscreen with it. I don't think it seems to flash back too bad, and that's to do with the high pigment content, which they all have, which I find is usual with those type of foundations that have a very high pigment. It's the same with the Studio Finish concealer. I just don't get flashback with that either. So I hope this was helpful, guys. Definitely check them out if you get a chance, and I will update again possibly in the future if I find out more about if these guys are going or not. But in the meantime, I hope this is helpful. Thanks a million for watching, guys. Slán.